District Board of School Directors. If you now all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, our next item is the EHS Student Government Association report. With us tonight is Ms. Lindsay Kaler. Take it away.
Good evening, everyone. I'm happy to be back to discuss this week's recent events at the high school. So first, I wanted to start with some fall sports. So congratulations to the EHS football team on an exciting victory over the formerly undefeated Easton Red. They'll face Parkland on Friday in the district championship, so that's very exciting. Girls field hockey beat Methacton on Saturday in state quarterfinals 3-1, and they play the Villa Maria tomorrow. Boys and girls cross country both strongly competed at states, and runners Maddie McCartney and Peyton Campbell had standout performances. Congratulations to all the athletes that competed in the postseason, and good luck to all those continuing in the playoffs. SGA just acquired 4 new freshmen after an application and interview process, and now we're preparing for holiday events and our upcoming donations. The EHS Counseling Office is offering college visits for juniors and seniors, and is also offering instant decision days for many state universities. EHS is also offering many travel opportunities, like thanks to the Rotary Youth Exchange Program. And there's an Iceland trip in June 2025, a Spain and Portugal trip in 2026, and the art department is running a trip to Thailand. The Interact Club is hosting a food drive for families and students in the East Penn School District until December 12th. And FBLA, Students and Future Business Leaders of America, just attended a state leadership workshop. EHS Avidum, a mental health club, hosted a talk workshop at Ayer for Avidum clubs in the surrounding districts to discuss ways to support student mental health. And congrats to EHS senior Riley Newfer, as she was named Pennsylvania Art Education Association Student of the Month for November. So that's everything. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Kaler. Are there any questions or comments from the board? Ms. Bowman.
Yes, I have a question. You may not, if you don't have the answer for it, it's fine. I noticed some parents were asking about the overseas trips and trying to figure out more information about them and try to get a list of them. Is there a central location where they can learn about the trips to Iceland and Spain, and I forget what the other location was?
Thailand and Portugal. Okay. I went on one, and it was through a class that I was taking, but I know clubs run them, and I'm sure they're on the website somewhere.
Yeah. If you could, maybe after the meeting, if you could send me a link, I'd like to get it to the parents that were asking about it.
I'll just say, I know that they come in the daily announcements, often have, the email often has information about all these trips.
That's true.
Where I see it anyway.
Okay, thank you. Good question. Any other comments? All right, thank you for your report. As will be the custom, you're welcome to stay for the meeting, but if you have other things you'd like to do tonight, you're free to go.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Take care. All right, next item on the agenda, a request to comment. We have one, and as per usual, I'm going to read the following statement before calling the speaker. For those of you who may be unfamiliar with public comment, speakers should feel free to express their opinion, comment, or question, and understand that this is not an interactive engagement with the board or with the administration. Please direct your correspondence to the chair, be respectful, not engage in profane rhetoric, not disclose confidential personal information regarding staff or students, or comment on matters in violation of the law or board policy, and be mindful that others, including students, may be listening. I would request that you consider that protocol when making your comments. For the members of the audience, please also be respectful and refrain from speaking during the public comment period. With that, I will now announce our speaker and his topic. When you step up to the podium, again, state your name, and you will have 3 minutes within which to speak. I will provide a 30-second warning for when your time is up. Okay, our commenter tonight is Mr. Jay Bradley on leaving the organization, thanking community, and encouraging support.
Yeah, sorry. It's weird to be up here and not recording down there, first of all. And also, sorry for missing some of the recent meetings. I hope you understand that presidential election season's a bit of a all hands on deck affair. But yes, I'm Jay Bradley. I'm the East Penn area reporter for Lehigh Valley Public Media and LehighValleyNews.com. I wanted to inform the school board that I will be leaving, unfortunately, Lehigh Valley Public Media this month to pursue unique opportunities to travel and eventually be closer to friends and family as I pursue some new initiatives. This was due to a combination of a lot of circumstances. I want to assure you it was not taken lightly, and nor did any of you scare me off. I appreciate so much the openness and availability of those in the school community here, from board and administration to residents, be it over elections, expansion, budgets, or the other issues facing the community. I hope there was value from increasing coverage of the East Penn area. Everyone was a very good sport and receptive as I figured out how things worked around here. For those who value more eyeballs in the community, I highly recommend financially supporting Lehigh Valley Public Media as a recurring donor, as the outlet is a nonprofit owned and operated by community members. At the same time, remember that many individual donors can have more power to sustain an institution like that than a small group of very wealthy sponsors and donors can really ever can. So please reach out to the newsroom. Also, let them know that coverage of this area is important to you if you want to see more of it, and what you want highlighted in the community. For those interested in sending press releases to the organization, to the newsroom, you can find a general news email on LehighValleyNews.com. Also, please continue supporting the Stinger and instilling as much as you can in the students here with curiosity and the ability to follow that with rigorous discovery. All right, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Bradley, and again, appreciate your service to the community.
Yeah, I'd like to break protocol and just comment. I'd like to thank you too, Jay. Your coverage has always been fair and unbiased and gave both sides of the story. So I really appreciate your integrity, and best of luck to you on your future endeavors.
Okay. Thank you for that, Mr. Jankowski. I think we all share the same sentiment. Okay. Next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes from the October 28th, 2024 meeting. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Are there any comments or questions from the board? Okay, seeing none, Ms. Allen, please call the roll.
Ms. Bowman?
Aye.
Mr. Falegi?
Aye.
Ms. Ford?
Aye.
Mr. Jankowski?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Ms. Klotz?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Dr. Whitney?
Aye.
Dr. Levinson?
Aye.
9 ayes.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. Next item is the district update. Dr. Campbell.
Yes, on this Veterans Day, throughout the district and our community, we pause and honor and express our deepest gratitude to the men and women who've served in the United States Armed Forces. Throughout the district today, as well as we had some assemblies last week, I'm so very proud of our schools, our administrators, and our students who were involved in really amazing assemblies and events that honored the veterans in our community. I had the privilege of participating in the assemblies at Albertus, Lower Macungie Middle School, and Willow Lane, but I can tell you that almost every single one of our schools had really amazing presentations today and last week as well. As a school district, we're proud to serve a diverse community that includes our veterans, active duty service members, as well as their families. So again, we're thinking of all of our veterans today and every day. As Lindsay mentioned, she did several highlights of some of the amazing accomplishments of the students in the school district, and I'll very briefly repeat or touch upon some of those. Congratulations to the EHS football team for their really phenomenal win on Friday. They rocked the house in Easton, and I'm going to say probably like the last 30 seconds of the game were some of the most exciting. And we wish them luck as they play Parkland this Friday, and that's going to be held at Whitehall, so it's somewhat local. We hope you'll come out and support the Hornets at the district championship game. Also, congratulations to EHS field hockey champions. They are now in the state semifinals. That will be tomorrow evening against Villa Maria, and that's going to be at the Exeter School District. Again, also somewhat close, so we encourage our community to come on out and support the Hornets. As Lindsay also mentioned, I wanted to recognize an Emmaus High School senior, Riley Newfer. Riley was recently named as November Student Artist of the Month by the Pennsylvania Art Education Association, again, to be recognized at the state level among a group of highly talented artists is pretty amazing. And as Jay gave a shout out in his comments earlier to the Stinger, I also wanted to give a huge congratulations to the staff of the Stinger, specifically several student journalists who were recently recognized by the National Scholastic Press Association's Best of Show competition. Specifically, Ion Shaw, Karina McCallum, and Ray Murphy are all recipients of national awards, and I'm going to work with them, and we'd love to invite them to a future board meeting to delve a little deeper into their specific accomplishments. So incredibly proud of them. We're also very proud of many members of the Emmaus High School choral program. Specifically, we have 20 students, which is a phenomenal amount, who were selected for the PMEA District Chorus. We have Emily Brown, Anna Chavoya Ramirez, Liam Hughes, Ryan Jack, Kira Kelly, Hannah Kern, Ashley Fee, Lila Schneider, Diego Chavoya Ramirez, Dylan Dewey, Christopher Fullenwider, Noah Hover, Charles Kenny, Tom McDonnell, Elle Skaggs, Santiago Chavoya Ramirez, that's a pretty talented family, Bryson De Silva, Varun Rajam, Benjamin Wilkes, and Dane Drozda. Again, those students were certainly proud of their vocals and being able to compete against some of the top singers in our area, so we wish them well. I also wanted to share with the community that Lehigh Career and Technical Institute, you oftentimes hear about an update on LCTI and the phenomenal programs that they offer, and we have many students at Emmaus High School who take advantage of those programs. LCTI is having their annual open house on Thursday, November 14th. For prospective high school students. The event runs from 6 to 8 p.m. Doors open at 5:45. We really encourage you to get there early. If you've never been to LCTI, we encourage you to really attend the open house to see the amazing programs that they have available. And information for registration is on the district website as well as LCTI website. I will also say that we're very fortunate that we have our 8th graders at Eyre and Lower Macungie Middle School who've been taking tours of LCTI to just start to think about some of the programming that's available to them. You may have also heard in some of the updates that our board members give that we also do tours for 5th graders as well. Those come later in the school year. But again, a lot of opportunities for our students and families to just learn about the great programming at LCTI. And then finally, certainly just wanted to echo the sentiments of some of our board members in terms of wishing Mr. Bradley well in his future professional and personal endeavors, and we'll say that it's been just a real pleasure working with him and feel that he's always been very fair and honest in his coverage of news, including the news related to us here at Emmaus at East Penn. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Campbell. Any comments or questions from the board? Ms. Bowman?
I guess I wanted to first congratulate all of the students who are excelling in the district, and it's always nice to hear the updates meeting after meeting about that. Specifically, Mr. Bradley had brought up the Stinger, and the past 2 meetings have been, we actually got copies of the Stinger, but I think for a really long period we didn't, and I'm not sure like if it was an oversight or if the Stinger wasn't publishing paper copies or what that was, but this copy in particular that was given to the board tonight, I think, is an example of excellent student journalism. I think sometimes student journalism can be uncomfortable for a district, especially for administrators who are trying to do your best. And here you have students pointing out things that aren't working and problems and criticisms. But that said, this is what helps us improve, and pointing out, for example, that they don't, second chance learning. I didn't actually get a chance to read the editorial that they wrote about it, but it sounds like that there's some negativity there. And I think it's important for us as a board and for the administration to read those with an open mind and understand that these are issues that they are bringing to us. So I think mostly I want to thank the district for supporting student journalism, because it could be really easy to have a knee-jerk reaction to try to quash those hard questions that students tend to ask. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bowman. Any additional comments? Ms. Ford?
I just wanted to mention the same thing. I had actually mentioned the article to Kristen, how well it was written in the Stinger. And I'm always impressed by the level and the content of the articles. And this one definitely was captivating. I read the whole thing. And so please extend congratulations to them again. And their autonomy is impressive. So thank you. And it's always good to hear that we're supporting journalism in this day and age. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ford. Any other comments? Mr. Falegi?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I would just like to thank all our veterans out there on this Veterans Day for their service, and to kind of echo off Dr. Campbell. I was able to attend and had the privilege to go with my father and my father-in-law, both veterans, to Jefferson's assembly today. Mr. Hafner, the teachers, and especially the students did an absolutely fabulous job. And I think we as a district across the board do a great job when it comes to Veterans Day. Because when I got home, my mother-in-law called me and said, well, I went and attended LMMS, and she said, because this is my daughter's last year there, but she said it was absolutely amazing. So thank you for the district and all they do for our veterans.
Thank you for that comment. Any other comments? Okay, well, thank you, Dr. Campbell, for your report. Moving on to the next item, personnel. May I have a motion?
Moved.
Second.
Are there any comments or questions from the board? Okay, seeing none, Ms. Allen, please call the roll.
Mr. Falegi?
Aye.
Ms. Ford?
Aye.
Mr. Jankowski?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Ms. Klotz?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Dr. Whitney?
Aye.
Ms. Bowman?
Aye.
Dr. Levinson?
Aye.
9 ayes.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. I believe Dr. Campbell has some comments.
Yes, just wanted to recognize the contributions of 2 employees, longstanding employees in East Penn, who will retire this school year, including Mrs. Sonia Parks, who's been a member of our food service team for 27 years. And she's been in several district buildings, including Alberta Shoemaker, EHS, and most recently Lower Macungie Middle School. So we'll certainly miss her. And Mr. Jonathan Peters has over 11 years of experience as a member of our maintenance team. He's been a building custodian at Willow Lane, Emmaus High School, and most recently at Lower Macungie Middle School. So again, congratulations to both of them, and just wanted to, on behalf of administration, express our appreciation for their service.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Campbell. Okay, next category on the agenda is business operations. First item, item A, is a presentation on a LERTA, Local Economic Revitalization Tax Assistance presentation. Dr. Campbell, would you like to introduce?
Yes, I'm pleased to introduce, joining us this evening, Michael Mayer from Westrom Development Company, and accompanying him, Eric Hetzel, I believe, will be addressing some points of the presentation. Tonight's presentation really is informational. As Dr. Levinson just explained, this particular presentation is on a LERTA request for Furnace Street property in the borough of Emmaus. Again, LERTA stands for Local Economic Revitalization Tax Assistance. I think throughout the presentation tonight, we're going to use the acronym LERTA. Westrom is interested in feedback from the board as you engage in this informational presentation and potentially consider Alerta for the future. Again, there's no action to be taken by the board this evening. It's really informational, an opportunity to ask questions, engage in discussion. And at this point, I'll turn things over to Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Campbell, for having us. My name is Michael Mayer. I'm with Eric Hetzel. We're here to present a little bit about the project we're working on in Emmaus. Just by a very brief background, we've been working on this project for about a year, and we've been in discussions about Alerta with the Borough of Emmaus, the County of Lehigh, and Dr. Campbell and her staff really since maybe early this summer. So we're here at this point to take that conversation a little bit further and get some feedback from this board. So thank you. As Dr. Campbell said, we're looking for feedback on Alerta property tax abatement schedule for the proposed redevelopment of 300 Furnace Street in Emmaus. Really quickly about Westrum, I work for Westrum Development. We're a real estate and residential developer. We've been in business for about 38 years, headquartered in Montgomery County, right in Fort Washington, Pennsylvania. We build all kinds of projects, all kinds of residential projects. But we really mainly focus on, I'll call infill projects, where there's a project in a community that is sitting fallow and is no longer generating and sitting in a community, but the community wants to see that project be something else. So we've kind of become an expert in kind of that redevelopment, that infill development, that sustainable development projects. Land acquisition. I'll talk a little bit about brownfields in Act 2 because the project we're talking about is environmental contamination. So it has that kind of hair on it, and we're experts at that, but we do recognize that has complexities and cost and that comes with that. Public-private partnerships, that's what I'm here for today. We're a private company. A public-private partnership in many respects can be any combination of a public sector and a private. That's what we have with this project so far with the Borough of Emmaus, who supported this LERTA, and we're hoping we continue that public-private partnership. Because essentially what we have in Emmaus is a project where the community and the borough has supported the project, but it couldn't get off the legs because of the economic challenges for the project. Westrum, we're a builder, we lease, we property manage. So when we come to a community, we shared this with the leadership in Emmaus. It's not us developing this and pawning it off to another builder and another leasing company. We're here. We hire the builders. The property management will be our staff. We lease it. We select the community and we manage it. So when we build a community, we take that piece from soup to nuts. So here's the project. It's about 8.5 acres. If you can see the screen here, it's essentially bordered by on the north side of the screen by 2nd Street, and then the south side of the screen about 4th Street, about 2 blocks from downtown, walking downtown of the downtown Emmaus. It's a diamond in the rough, and for sure for the last 30 years it was on the rough side. Functionally obsolete parcel, abandoned buildings, overgrown conditions, but walking distance to town, 2.5 blocks to town. Environmental contamination throughout the 8-acre parcel, and it's been sitting like this for about 30 years. So what has happened in the site before it became fallow in 1995? Its history of environmental contamination is long. It was a fuel oil distribution facility. It was a foundry and machine shop, petroleum storage tank repair, cleaning and lining. And then as a result of that, you have the legacy of the property that sat there for 30 years, undeveloped and undevelopable. The bottom image you see there of the property, there's kind of a faint yellow circle. That's what we call historic fill in the environmental world, which means it's not native soil. It shouldn't be there, but it is. So when we start to understand the ability to redevelop the site for residential, we start to look at where the historic fill is, where the clean fill is, and how we can create an engineering solution to overcome that issue on the site. Some more pretty pictures of the site as it sat here. It was a nuisance. I think if you ask Shane Pepe at the borough, this was the township's the borough's number one priority to get developed here. And it's sad, as I said, for many, many years. In fact, Westrom, we started getting involved in this project about a year ago, but the project's redevelopment started in 2019, 2018 by a local developer named Jeff Trainer and Jeff Ott. They started the project, that they envisioned this project to bring an apartment complex to this community. They did a lot of the early work, received the community support for rezoning this property for a multifamily apartment community. They did that in 2019, 2020. Then that development group, they're not a builder, they went to the community to try to find a developer to partner with them to build it. Unsuccessful. It sat for 3 or 4 years, and the reason why, and Shane Pepe was quoted in this paper, the reason why it sat is because of the environmental contamination and the complexities of meeting the DEP regulations to redevelop this contaminated property for residential. So it sat for many, many years until we came around this time last year and started to look at the property. DEP has a program called Act 2. It's a voluntary cleanup program. It essentially incentivizes, it tries to get land that has contamination back on the payroll, back on the tax rolls. And how they do that they provide liability protection for developers to come into a property that has legacy environmental issues. And the promise is they'll give that developer protection from any lawsuits or liability down the road, so long as that developer meets the DEP regulations to clean up the property. They do proper testing, proper characterization, and meet their DEP regulations. So that's the bargain. It's a complex project, or it's a complex process. It's complicated and not without risk, but we've done many of them. And that when we knew that about a year ago, we started to look into that and look under the hood about this project, what DEP said at that point, and see what it looks like today. 2019, that started that from Jeff Trainer and Jeff Ott. DEP actually approved the cleanup program, that liability program, in October of 2020, and then it sat for a few years because they weren't able to find a developer to come partner with. We came about this time last year to start looking at the property. Lo and behold, because it sat for a long time, DEP changed their regulations, so they made it more strict. So the approval they received in 2021 was no longer valid, so we had to go back under the hood and do additional characterization, additional testing, additional investment to understand whether this property could be developed as it was envisioned back in 2020. So the short answer is it can. The longer answer is it takes more time and more money. So what's going to happen to this property as we develop this? Soil removal and management, we're taking some of that historic fill and we're keeping a lot of it on site. We're taking a lot off, but we're also going to create a cap, an environmental cap on top of the property. We've removed underground tanks that were sitting on the property with leaking petroleum product. We've done a tremendous amount of groundwater testing and delineation. The environmental cap, there'll be a deed restriction on the property. There was asbestos in the abandoned buildings that we had to remove before demolition. And there were actually wetlands on the site that we had to characterize, delineate, and relocate because they were in the wrong location. So that's kind of the basket of what you have to go through to be able to achieve the DEP regulations for residential, which we're going to want, our investors want, the community wants to make sure this property gets cleaned up. Site plan, this is the 8-acre site. Essentially what you see are 4 buildings. Each building has 36 units. And then in the center, that little eye is a small clubhouse with a small pool, a small gym, a little dog area for a dog park, and lots of parking. When we come to a community, we try to get ourselves grounded in the local community and inspired by local facades, and just gives you a sense of kind of how we've started to inform our design team to say what this building in this community wants to look like. Just some examples, some local photos from the area. This is what we hope to build on the site. Each building would be almost unique, almost identical. Each one will have between a mix of 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. Each one will have a small patio, a single entrance at either end of the building, and a walk up, no elevator into the building. All right, here's the LRTA acronym Dr. Campbell talked about. This happened formally by the Borough Council in September. They approved the LRTA as a whole for the town, for the borough, and this is what they approved. Essentially what this I think in the LERTA business, the state allows you, a local community to have either a 5-year or a 10-year. This is essentially a 5-year LERTA, and essentially what it is a stepped tax base. And each year, the LERTA taxes reduction decreases by 20%. So the first year we'd have 0 taxes on the increment, and then it winds down to the 6th year where you're fully taxed. Going on the LERTA process timeline, the Planning Commission reviewed our project, and then the Borough Council unanimously approved it. We're here tonight meeting with the East Penn School District Board, and we've been in discussions with Phil Armstrong and Frank Kane about a similar participation by Lehigh County. All right. So part of our discussion with Dr. Campbell and her staff was, first was a fiscal impact analysis. We did this for the borough, we did this for the county, and we've also shared this with the school district. And I'll give you a couple slides of what that fiscal impact looks like. And essentially, from the school district perspective, there's 2 things in that fiscal impact study: revenue coming in for the project and costs incurred by the school district, i.e. school-age children. And we spent a lot of time with Dr. Campbell and staff and Eric and third-party studies that really try to understand what we're asking the school district, which is we're asking for them a reduction of tax basis for a 5-year period. Obviously, the question is, well, how many school-age children are going to be brought to this community? So that's really what we spend a lot of time looking at. So I'll give you some of our feedback on what we've presenting here tonight. Before I do that, so today the assessment for this property total as it sits today is $13,289. That's split between the borough, the school district, and Lehigh County, and the school district gets $8,432. That's probably something close you've been receiving for the last 25 or 30 years. Should we build the project, what we've been able to do is assess based on the common level ratio in the county that the projected tax would increase to $281,000 for the school district, or around 32 times what you're getting today. All right, so school-age children. So what we really did was roll up our sleeves, both with Eric Hetzel, who's done this in many districts, and Dr. Campbell and staff. So we looked at a lot of things to really come up with this fiscal study and the school-age children. First of all, we looked at the school district enrollment projections, how much the school district spends per student. The school district has their own demographer, and they use their own multiplier as they do their own projections for residential communities. As we've learned, is that multiplier is more generic. We have some other multipliers that are more specific for our community that's more applicable, we believe. We've looked at calculations based on other experience with similar communities, third-party studies throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania that looked at specifically 1- and 2-bedroom communities like we're proposing here. And then we looked at, I think, 6 communities in the school district of similar size and unit mix. So we looked at all that data to really come to some informed projection to share with you tonight. All right, so we're talking about 144 units of the project. 80 of them will be 1-bedroom units, and the projections of third-party studies throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, 1-bedroom units usually expect around 0.05 school-age children per unit. So if you take our 80 units that we're proposing at 0.05, our community would have 4 school-age children within the 80 1-bedrooms. Do that for the 2-bedrooms. 2-bedrooms are going to have a little bit more. They're larger units. So you're 0.09 for a total of 6 within our 64 2-bedrooms. So for a total of 10, if we just look at that kind of third-party analysis. I show you one more before I go to the next slide. The Meadows, which is a community, 2 blocks from here. It's 230 units. We understand that if you look at that community today, there's 15 school-age children from the Meadows that go to the East Penn School District schools. If you apply the Meadows breakdown of 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom for the multipliers I shared above, the 0.05 and the 0.09, that would yield 18 for the Meadows. So I share that just as an example that our data, the projections of 0.05 and 0.09 for 1 and 2 bedrooms and the Meadows it holds true. In fact, the Meadows is actually 83% of that, so it's actually less. All right, so then if you take the 10 school-age children, the projections for the third party, here's what a fiscal impact analysis would look at. If you look at the far left column, which is the 2026, 2027, I'll run through it quickly and then you can understand how it goes in from there. 144 total units. The school-age children, I kept that at 0.07 for a total of 10 school-age children. Real estate tax revenue today, that's the $8,400 that the school district will get. The alerta never abates the current taxes that you got. The school district, the local taxing authorities will always get the current abatement. The only abatement is for future projections, future assessments. There's going to be an earned income tax that's projected here for around $73,000. There's a real estate transfer tax, so the total district revenue year one is $82,000. School district cost for 10 school-age children using the $14,493 based on the 2023-2024 school district, that yields a cost for the school district in year one of $144,000. So year one doesn't look great in terms of this, but you have to, as you expand this out, the school district, in terms of the revenue we get versus the cost to educate the school district, becomes much more positive after the, during the third year. This analysis for the 10 school age assumes a couple things. 100% occupancy of our community. We're never 100% occupied. We're usually 95%, 93%. All students that live in the community would go to the district. That's usually average around 85 or 88%. So we're assuming that they all go there. They don't attend any charter or private institution. So I take that, and let me just go to the next slide. That's for 10. Now, the additional inputs I shared that we looked at, the school district multiplier, the other communities within East Penn School District, would suggest that we double that to be conservative, to make sure we're not underestimating the potential school-age children that we're asking the school district to educate. So we've doubled that, go from essentially 10 to 20. This is that 20 now. The only difference really would be the school district cost that goes up, because 20 students at $14,000 is the $289,000 a year. And in this scenario where we've doubled it, when you're at year 5, the school district is in the positive. So there's two examples of, what our projection of 10 versus, a more conservative projection where we doubled it at 20. And you get a sense of how the school district would fare in terms of this fiscal impact analysis. So kind of to conclude, for sure, we believe the benefits are that the taxes will rise by 32 times what the school district is getting today. We believe it's a low cost tax rateable, it's a predictable revenue source with a low cost impact to the school district. Certainly at 10, at 20 even still works. There's an earned income tax that's not affected by the LRTA. There's additional transfer tax, and it becomes sustainable. It becomes a long-term rateable for the school district. And independent of the school district, for sure, whether you're stepping back and looking at the community as a whole, and Emmaus, even Lehigh County, it transforms a long vacant industrial site to creating a sustainable residential community in the district. So we think there's benefits for sure. So why are we here asking for LRTA? The hardest piece really in a development is those early years. Those early years when you spent the money, and you're leasing up, but you still have your full bills to pay. You still have your mortgage to pay. You still have your staff to pay. You still have your grounds maintenance to pay. And then the full tax assessment comes in at you. So that's really what's really helpful for developments like this. In this particular case, given the extraordinary cost for environmental, is really that help, and that there's first 3 or 4 years of that LRTA that helps the cash flow make sure the development is successful and can be successful in the long term.
Okay. Thank you very much for that presentation. I'll now open up the floor for questions from the board. Mr. Jankowski.
Thank you for this presentation and the information and data you provided. It's really helpful for us to break it down. Just a curious question about, so in other developments that you've done similar to this one, what, and I understanding, different areas, different different demographics, but what tends to be the demographic of, at your, whatever your projected price point's going to be for these units? What have you seen as the demographic that would typically rent your units?
Yeah.
I mean, are you seeing school-age children in these? I mean, the numbers I know are based on estimates and but what are you seeing in reality?
We have a project we built 7 of these projects called Luxors. They're lifestyle apartments. We usually see 3 school-age children per 100 units. They're low.
Yeah, okay.
They're not, the demographic that we see are working professionals. It's changing a little bit. Sometimes they're retired. I mean, they're well appointed. It's not a luxury product, but it's a well designed, smartly designed, efficient space. So they're not large units either. They generally don't lend itself to school-age children. We do see it sometimes. Sometimes families come in as part of perhaps a divorce where a child's already in the district where they're transitioning. So that is something we see. But it's generally our Luxor community is around 3 per 100.
Thanks, that's helpful. Where are you in the development process right now?
We have cleared the site. We've removed a lot of soil. We've sunk wells in on the perimeter of the site to understand if the groundwater is migrating off-site, and we've started to pour foundations for building number 1. So I'd say we're going at it always. We've had great weather, so our site contractor really took advantage of the last 35 days of dry. But I say that because I think we're not through the environmental yet, because we still don't have the groundwater has to come back for, I think, 2 consecutive quarters to see if we're able to contain it. We've moved a lot of the soil, we've moved all those oil tanks that had petroleum, and now we have to wait and see if we have to explore off-site mitigation.
So is this project completion contingent upon getting the LRTA authorization from all 3 taxing bodies, or are you a go regardless?
It's not. I mean, we closed on the project, we funded it, so we're a go. Why we're here at this stage here, because we believe that a public-private partnership for this will allow this to be successful. I think we all want this to be successful. Certainly Emmaus, the borough supported this after we closed, but they see the benefits of those 3 or 4 years where we're getting all of our costs, we're still dealing with all the environmental remediation costs, and we're leasing up. That's really where these developments can rise or shine.
Now, if you were to get the LRTA approval from the school district, you got it from the borough, would that in any way impact the rent rate that you set at? Like, would you make an adjustment based on that, or are you already set what your rents are going to be?
Yeah, we won't make an adjustment, I don't believe. Our average rent we project for this is $2,133. That's a mix of the 1 and the 2 bedrooms.
And you say you average about a 95% occupancy rate?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. Well, thanks again.
Sure, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Niskowski. Mr. Smith?
Thank you. Can you do me a favor and go back to where you got the $144,933 from the 23-24 tax
There you go. Here.
document? Mr. Saul, I'm going to lean on you here for a little bit. I'm curious if you could tell me exactly where those total school district costs or the average per pupil expenditure came from. I just went back and we're a couple budget cycles away from this, so I may have a hard time finding the 120.6 million. I'm a little, given that the average cost of educating a student in Pennsylvania in 2023 was just under $22,000 per student for a regular ed student, I'm a little curious as to where 14.4, almost 14.5 came from.
I'll let Eric take that.
Sure.
Good evening. I'm Eric Hetzel with EH Creative Services. I'm a land planner by training. I maintain a specialization in evaluating community impacts related to development and growth projects. In looking at school district budgets, we understand that There are some elements to the cost portion of the equation that represent pass-throughs, certain expenses that are revenue pass-throughs that don't necessarily relate to the instructional support costs. That's really what the 14,493 represents. It's netting out those pass-throughs, things like federal funds, state funds, utility realty taxes, and certain other things like that. So that's how that's assessed.
Okay. It just seems like that number's a lot different than what I'm used to seeing. But regardless, be that as it may, looking at your projections of students that would be coming in conservatively, let's say it's 8, let's say it's 9. There's not a lot of buffer between the costs incurred by the district and the potential revenue stream, especially for those first 5 years. So I have a little bit of hesitation there, especially when considering that at $45,000, $50,000 per student who is a student receiving special education services, it would only take 4 or 5 of those, and we're in, overshooting that benefit in perpetuity for as long as those students might be with a district. So there's not a lot of, from where I'm sitting looking at the numbers, there's not a lot of wiggle room between the where we are in terms of our costs incurred versus the potential revenue. So I'm interested to hear if there's things that I'm not missing, or if others have other thoughts on that. But that's just kind of where I'm at right now at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Ms. Klotz.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I appreciate it. Just a couple of questions here. With these apartments, how long do you see the residents staying in them?
We think this location, this community, will see low turnover. So what does that mean? Our Luxor communities have a higher turnover. These will be lower turnover. I don't know what the average is. I think we project a couple years.
Okay. And something that you said about Act 2 actually really got my attention. You said that it's a voluntary cleanup program. And please correct me if I'm wrong, because this is your wheelhouse, not mine. The DEP releases the developer from liability down the road as long as the developer meets certain criteria for the property. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Okay. So 10 years down the road, if there are complications due to the challenging nature of this property, what would happen with the residents? Like, so does that mean, like, for instance, if there happens to be, sorry to mention this, but like a cancer cluster or something like that, so what would they do in that situation? Like, they wouldn't be able to go back against you guys, and this doesn't necessarily have something to do with the school district other than the health of the students, of course.
Sure.
What would happen with that?
Well, what we're going to achieve from DEP at the end of this project is a residential quality cleanup plan. Mm-hmm. That's the highest level DEP can offer in terms of that. So we believe we're going to have a clean site. What the liability protection really does is, if there's something that was not tested, deep groundwater or something that was unforeseen, that, if we look, I go back to the slides, this site's been poked and prodded, nearly every site. But what it does, it just gives that liability protection so that investors or banks can sign on the dotted line and know that they're going to get through a quality, a institutional cleanup plan, and they're not going to be after anything liability.
Thank you for that. So would there be additional testing in, say, like a decade, 5 years, 10 years further down the road, just to make sure that everything environmentally is still sound?
There will be, after we open, there'll be some, what DEP typically requires for groundwater is post, monitoring. It could be 2 or 3 years after the fact to make sure the monitoring wells continue. There's also follow-up on the wetland reconstruction. So once we close the project, there is additional regulatory check-ins.
Okay, and just one more. when the potential residents come to view the property, rent an apartment, are they made aware of the environmentally challenged nature of the property?
There's not a requirement to do that. There wouldn't be a need to give them any notice or any concern because we're going to get such a high cleanup satisfaction from DEP.
Okay. All right, thank you so much.
Sure.
Okay, Dr. Whitney?
Yeah, just one question about one of the other numbers in here, which is the earned income tax revenue. You're estimating 73,000 a year, and if my back of the napkin math is right, that's estimating about 50,000 earned income per unit. Does that sound about right? Is that a figure you would base that on?
It's actually about twice that. We're assuming household income would represent 4 times the cost of rent, which is
Okay.
a real estate rule of thumb.
Right.
So that could be 1 or 2 people working in that,
Yeah,
but that's to sustain that kind of rent, you would need that level of income.
yeah. Is there anything in your experience in similar communities that would suggest that number might be higher? Or the income levels?
Certainly could be higher. We try to be more conservative rather than
Yeah.
less. If the number's higher, then it could go towards offsetting additional school costs, for sure.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ford?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation and the information and for taking on such an ambitious project. You had mentioned about forecasting that it would be a low turnover. And my first thought was, with the current climate in housing and lack of housing, this obviously is a good project. But the thing I was thinking about, in your Luxor communities, are there annual increases in the rent? Obviously, if there are students, it's ideal if they're within the school system from kindergarten and on. So how are you determining that low turnover? And if you're having annual increases in the rent, it's a hefty number. It's a hefty number if you're starting at the 2,133, and then next year, what does that jump to, and the following year? And how does that correlate to maintaining low turnover?
Yeah, that's a good question. What we experience in terms of the rent, it's market-based, so it does fluctuate. The tighter the community, and we see it now in the comparisons that we looked at in this community. A lot of them are 95, 96% occupied. So when we establish our 2133 average rent and really our first step is to really look at the market and look at the potential income that probably could generate so we can determine whether we could build this or not. So annual increases are really depending on the market and the success of the project and the community at large is really how we look at it. But we do expect of course we will have school-age children in this community, but it's the design, the layout, it doesn't lend it, of course it's going to happen, but this does not lend itself well. Our experience is there will be school-age children for sure, but it won't be, it'll be limited in that 10 or so range is our projection.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I had.
Ms. Klotz?
Hi. So actually, Ms. Ford, something that she said just kind of struck me. So you are looking for a tax abatement. Okay. So if you were granted that, would any of those savings actually go onto the residents?
No, not directly, for sure. The savings will help the community be successful. The savings will help us pay our bills when the building's not full, and it'll help us, the community, get on strong footing going forward.
Thank you.
Ms. Bowman?
Thank you so much. You mentioned that the way that the community is constructed, that you don't see people with children moving into it. Can you explain why that is? I see other 2-bedroom apartment communities, 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom with lots of kids. So I'm wondering, what is it that causes families with children not to move into a community like this?
Sure. First is in the community at large, of the 144 units, 80 are 1-bedrooms.
Okay.
So one bedrooms generally do not lend itself well. It happens for sure, and we see it, but it's not the norm for sure. And of the two bedrooms, the units are small. I mean, I think the average size of our community of the units is around 1,100 square feet. That's over a two bedroom. Their entrances, they're not private entrances. They're common entrances down a hallway. You look at when I was coming here tonight, I drove through the Meadows. The Meadows is much more spread out, right? There's a lot more different entrances for each of the buildings, and that would have less school-age children using our rule of thumb than we would. So it's really more the layout. It's really more geared for the working professional members.
And then you mentioned you used a lot of data to come up with your estimate for how many children might be in the complex. And I'm wondering if you could share that with us, because I don't know how representative the Meadows is. There's obviously apartment complexes all over this area. And I'd like to know which ones you consider representative of the one that you're building, and what those number of children impact would be for those. So that way we don't have to just trust you, we can actually see the real data, if that makes sense. And then have you built any of these in this area in Lehigh County?
This would be our first one.
Okay. And then you mentioned that this is already moving forward no matter what, but that getting the tax abatement would make the difference between successful versus unsuccessful. What does that mean? What is successful versus what is unsuccessful for this?
Sure. All right, lots of questions, but the data, I don't have all the communities we looked at, but we did look at the Meadows, Ironworks, Powder Mill, and I can get all this data to you through Dr. Gamble, Spring Creek, Oakland Apartments, and Brookfield. Okay. Those total units of all that represents 978 total units. Mm-hmm. Of that, 318 are one bedrooms, and 658 are two bedrooms. And what we receive from the school district is the actual school-age children of all those units, and that averages. That averages 0.14 school-age children over those 658 units.
Okay.
So that's how we got to. We believe it's lower, but let's take the conservative. That's why we doubled it, because we felt it was appropriate. It was the data that we're all working with together.
Okay, so you found that to be 0.14, but it looks like your multiplier is much less than that. Am I seeing this wrong? That you used 0.07 or 0.05?
Yeah, we used 0.07. Let me go back. Okay, so to come up with our 10 units, we used, 0.07. Okay. And then we said, let's double that to 0.14, which is reflective of those 6 units I just shared. It was fair. It was data that was received by the school district. We weren't relying on third-party studies. We're actually relying on communities in the school district of similar 1 and 2 bedrooms.
Okay, so the 0.14 calculation is the one that leads to 10 children, is that right?
That's 20. That would
20
be
children.
20.
Okay, sorry about that.
No, it's a lot of data I threw at you.
Yeah. And then I'm wondering if the school district, you don't have this really isn't a question for you, but we once had when we had the demographic survey done, they used a multiplier when they were estimating growth in the district for multifamily housing, and I'm curious to know what that was.
Yeah, they use this was the very question we asked our demographer. They actually anticipated in this particular development approximately 40 students. I will say, in digging deeper, it is because the multiplier that they use is for a multi-family dwelling. They do not specify for 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, townhouse. It's a calculation for multi-dwelling versus single-family residence. This particular development was included as part of our demographic and our enrollment projections because there had been some planning that had been done, and so those numbers were included. Again, what we then did in an attempt to get more specific and drill down for purpose of this presentation is exactly what Mr. Mayor just described in terms of looking at, in terms of actual students that comparable apartments across the district have produced.
Okay, that's helpful. I think I have, oh, did you answer the successful versus unsuccessful question?
I didn't. So, all right, let's just, envision we just finished our building, it's open. Our tax assessment came in, it's a full tax assessment. The leasing we're mostly empty, but we're ramping up our leasing. So we're trying to gain new residents for the revenue. So it's that period of time during, I'll call it the lease up, which is about 2 years or so, that the development is basically short on cash. So to have a reduced tax bill for year 1, 2, 3, 4 as it ramps up allows, as the tax bill ramps up that we pay and coincide with our leasing that ramps up, that's really what we can be successful for. Think about another way, if you don't get that, right, you're sure you have to, we have to cut large tax chats at full abatement. We're still leasing up, we still have many empty units, and it really puts pressure on the development. What happens in that development, it's hard. It becomes hard to really get a development that starts off on shaky ground back. You can't go back to the bank because you have a fixed sum, and the project, wants to be in the most successful way to have that, little leg up a little bit.
So what makes it unsuccessful is that you're limited with you've already built the project, you're limited in getting loans from a bank? Is that what you're
Sure,
saying?
you basically built the project, you have no money, and you have bills that are coming in and less revenue from rent to pay it.
Okay.
That's the piece that in a development like this is the most critical.
Okay. I think that's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bowen. Mr. Kelly?
Can I just ask my clarification? The district impact, the net impact, that's an annual impact. So is that saying for 10 school-age children by year 4, we're actually recouping? It's not till year 4 that we've recouped some of the money that our costs have incurred. Is that correct?
Well, in the 10 school-age children scenario or the 20?
The 10.
The 10, based on this, you're looking at the year 3.
By year 3, we're recouping some, but in terms of our costs, we spent about $70,000 roughly. So by year 4, we've actually recouped that $70,000 that the cost was. Is that correct? And so for then the 20 age, or the 20 school children, we're not recouping till after the chart is over?
After the alert is over?
No.
After the chart.
Yeah.
Are you talking about cumulative?
Right,
cumulative
costs.
Yeah, we didn't, I believe that's right. If you run this out on a cumulative basis, on both the 10 and 20, it's going to extend beyond here. I guess what we looked at it here, it's good feedback. We looked at it here as kind of each year, when did the school district recoup on an annual basis.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's what I was trying to understand. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, thank you for the question. Additional questions from the board? Ms. Bowman?
More of a legal question. So given, I think, I don't know if other board members agree with me or not, but, we're going to be losing money the first few years of this project. I'm curious if there's another way to structure the deal that's, what kind of legal room do we have to change how this works? Like, for example, not having a 0% on year 1.
Well, you're not bound by the same schedule that Emmaus put out.
Okay.
I know Mr. Mayor suggested that usually they're typically 10 years or 5 years. Emmaus was 5. You're not bound by 5 years. That's what Emmaus decided to do.
Okay.
there are other things that can be put into an agreement, perhaps in the long term, that might be of assistance. So for example, you could put some, what, after the LRTA was expired, whether it's 5 years, 10 years, it really doesn't matter. You could, as a part of this resolution approval, say you're not entitled to file for a tax assessment appeal for a certain amount of years thereafter. Nothing would preclude that. In fact, those of you who were on board when we did the TIF, that was a requirement the school district put in, no tax assessment appeals during the period of the TIF. Here, we're not as much worried about during the 5 or 10 years or whatever, it's that period after. You could put something like that in there. So there are things, you're not bound by what Emmaus did. Emmaus has the sole responsibility for determining this is a deteriorated area. Once they've determined that, it's within your discretion to join to participate in LRTA and to set the terms.
Okay, thank you. So I'm just going to give you a quick comment of my view on this. The other project that was mentioned, Hamilton Crossings, was extremely controversial. There was nobody on the board now that was on the board then that I know of. But when I was running for the board, that was one of the most common questions I got from the community, because people were extremely irate about the tax break given to that developer when they couldn't get such a break for themselves to buy a home. And so especially because this is going to cost the district money, and that cost will be borne basically by the other taxpayers in the district. I don't know that I can wrap my mind around the way that this step up is currently structured, especially because even at full force, we still might barely be making much of a profit depending on how many kids come in, especially if they're high support needs. So that's just my view right now. I just thought I'd mention it, but I don't know how the other board members feel.
Mr. Jankowski?
I mean, I'll give my contrary view. I think a lot's being put into the speculation of the number of students coming in here, which based on my experience, I even think 10 is not, I think that's a lot. I don't think that's accurate. I think it'd be much lower than that based on the size of the units, the 1 bedrooms. I personally am in favor of this structure. I think it brings value to the borough. I think it brings value to the school district. And quite frankly, while I appreciate the financial impact of additional students during these early years, I quite frankly don't see that as happening. I appreciate the work and the data provided, and I find a lot of benefit in this. So I, quite frankly, would support this based on the 5-year construct. I think this has a lot of value for the borough and the schools.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jankowski. Mr. Kelly?
I'd like to echo what Jeff's saying with that. I do think 20 is a very high number. So, I mean, looking at the impact for 10, I mean, it's a huge difference in terms of when we're recouping those costs. I would like in some way to see or hear if you've had any projections for how the development of these apartments would impact the surrounding property values of the housing around it. Of course, that's something that's on our radar. Have you done anything, projections along those lines?
I haven't. Kind of like, we call it like the halo effect. If you make a new development, it's kind of all ships rise in high tide type of thing.
Especially something that has had issues with development in the past?
If you've been in this area, it's bordered on some residential. There's a manufacturing building right outside. It's in the borough. There's a mixed use of incomes and quality of homes around there. I would suspect, looking forward, you're probably going to see that be improved. But I don't have any projections other than just my gut.
All right. Well, thank you for your work on this. Appreciate it.
Mr. Falegi.
Yeah, real quick, I'll echo Mr. Jankowski and Mr. Kelly as well. I've been a borough resident my whole life. That area up there has been an eyesore. I've stayed for over probably 30 years now. So, and I think we are kind of projecting higher on the amount of students that we're going to have there, and probably will. So, with that being said, I think it's a win for the borough, and in the long run, it'll be a win for the district. So, I would be encouraged to support it.
Thank you, Mr. Falegi. Mr. Smith?
Since it sounds like we're taking a little bit of a straw poll, I'll just put my thoughts out there. I am very in line, I think, with Ms. Bowman, my line of thinking. That I'm not beholden to it. I'm not locked into this line of thinking because it's not my backyard personally. So I would love to hear from folks like Mr. Falegi, who it is in their backyard. I know there were strong opinions back when the Hamilton Crossings was that whole thing was going on and predates all of us up here, but I know that was something that caused a lot of strong feelings, and this is something that is probably set to stir a lot of those feelings back up on a smaller degree because it's nowhere near that same kind of project. But I wouldn't be in favor, generally speaking, of doing something like using taxpayer dollars to subsidize a new hockey arena in Allentown, and I wouldn't. And that's a much bigger scale, but the same kind of idea down here, especially given to Ms. Ford's comment that there's a need for affordable housing, and if we're talking about taking the mortgage payment that some people have for their houses and charging that for rent in a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment. I market rate and all that, I get it. But it's hard to get there looking at those numbers. Again, I'm not locked in on that thought. I'll have a couple weeks here, it sounds like, to think about it before I make a final decision. But it is going to be one of those things where I do want to hear from the community. Have we reflected on the lessons of the TIF? Have we changed our sentiment on those discussions from 10 years ago or whatever it was now, and where we're at today compared to where we were 10 years ago? I'm curious if there's a change in approach from the community, especially to those folks who are Emmaus lifers and have this particular property in their backyard. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Well, I'd actually like to make some comments. I appreciate the thoughtful comments of my fellow board members. Certainly a lot of good questions and perspective has been shared. I want to take maybe a more high level view of this. First off, I'm happy that your company has decided to invest in the property and make a go of it. Obviously, using brownfield land, is often a disincentive for developers. So, I give you credit for taking the initiative to try and make this work. I do view, the school district, to be a community partner, and Emmaus being a significant part of the East Penn School District. We want to do things that are going to help promote, smart growth within that community and allow it to be, to thrive. One thing to recognize is, Emmaus is a landlocked borough. Our district, is there are only so many places where you can develop. And, I'm thinking, 10, 15, 20 years down the road in terms of where, what we have to do in terms of being able to, expand the tax base. And so this is a potential opportunity to earn some money or earn some additional funds to help support the district. So again, getting back to the fact that we're a community partner, what can we do to help the other, to help the borough or the other communities that are in our district? Certainly, being able to use blighted land that was serving no purpose for the last 30 years and do something constructive with it, I think is a positive. I think the fact that an environmental cleanup is taking place is a positive to take those contaminants out of our community. I do think that, there are potential costs for the students. Again, as Mr. Jankowski said, that's largely speculative at this point. It's hard to know. But you look at what the net benefit's going to be. I mean, you're going to have, we'll have real estate tax revenue. There will be earned income tax. I do think that if you're going to put 144 units in the community, a couple hundred people, that's a couple hundred people who are going to shop locally and create economic activity in the borough. And, that's going to float all boats and perhaps, create some intangible benefit in terms of revenue that's brought into the district. So, I think that, as a board, we evaluate what the impact of this project is going to be. I think we have to think a little bit beyond just what the potential student cost is and what the overall benefit is going to be to the community in terms of environmental factors, and potential economic activity and the other things that go on that can promote better community and better growth. So I'm certainly intrigued by this and can see that there could be that there's a net benefit to this. But again, as a board, we're going to have to go back and think about these things and see what we'd like to propose. So are there any other comments from the board? All right, it was a very good discussion. Truly appreciate your time and addressing the questions, and have yourself a good evening.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Campbell.
Thank you.
Okay, getting back to business operations, there are 3 additional items. If there's no objections, I'd like to take a motion taking B, C, and D together. We have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Are there any comments or questions from the board? Okay, seeing none, Ms. Allen, please call the roll.
Ms. Ford?
Aye.
Mr. Jankowski?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Ms. Klotz?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Dr. Whitney?
Aye.
Ms. Bowman?
Aye.
Mr. Falegi?
Aye.
Dr. Levinson?
Aye.
9 ayes.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. Item 6 on the agenda is curriculum. If there are no objections, I'd like to take items A and B together. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Are there any comments or questions from the board? Ms. Klotz?
I just want to comment about the selection of studies, of courses that we have available. They're just amazing to me. It seems like, in my opinion, any student should be able to find something very interesting here. For instance, the one that I am most interested in is the Home Maintenance and Materials Technology course. So wondering if they might want a parent involvement in that one. I would really appreciate that. So, but just kudos to our course selection. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Klotz. Any other comments? I guess before we call the roll, I would like to again commend our high school and curriculum teams on putting together the new program of studies for the next academic year. All right, with no further questions or comments, Ms. Allen, please call the roll.
Mr. Jankowski.
Aye.
Mr. Kelly.
Aye.
Ms. Klotz.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Dr. Whitney.
Aye.
Ms. Bowman.
Aye.
Mr. Falegi.
Aye.
Ms. Ford.
Aye.
Dr. Levinson.
Aye.
9 ayes.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. Item 7 on the agenda is policy. We have updates to current policies, first reading. Would administration like to introduce?
Good evening. So we do have a few policies before you this evening. They're all current policies, and for the most part, they're minor updates. So if it's okay, I'll just go through each of them and just provide an overview of the changes. Policy 202, eligibility of non-resident students. Act 67 of 2024 amended the school code to include provisions for disenrolling a student when they do not reside in the school district. We've put into place already practices that align with this policy and the law. Policy 254, Act 82 of 2024 created a new section in the school code for any student who's required to move due to the parent's responsibilities in the service of the National Guard or the Reserve that result in the student having to transfer into the schools. This is an update to the policy, which was more recently approved by this board. Policy 113.1 and policy 113.2, just minor policy change, language changes and legal citations. Policy 236.1, just legal citations that were updated. 805.2, Act 55 of 24 established a new section of the school code requiring each school district to have at least one full-time school security personnel who has completed required training on to be school security personnel. And we do have that in place, and so we meet that requirement of the law and this policy. Policy 807, opening exercises, moment of silence, flag displays. Act 25 of 2024 created a new section of the school code, which includes a requirement for each school entity to conduct a moment of silence during instructional hours for students and faculty to observe the anniversary of September 11th, 2001. We actually did implement this year in practice, and so this would not be new to us, but would just be included into our policy. So that's the overview of the policies that are up for revision. Thank you.
Are there any? Yes, Ms. Klotz.
Hi. So I had some questions on, let's see, trying to find the page, excuse me. On pages 17 and 18. Okay, and the behavior support, 100 programs, code 113.2 draft. So reading this, I came up with some questions about restraints, for instance. There's language about restraints in here. So how often, do we know how often restraints are used with our students? Like, I don't know if it actually has something to do with regulations right now. So please, we can talk about it at another point. But, you know, how often are these used, and how are teachers, or how many teachers and administrators are typically called or involved when restraints are used?
Sure. Just to be clear, so what you're talking about is actually in current policy. That's not anything that's that's updated or being revised or anything. So
yes.
To that point, restraints, yes, we do know. When restraints are done, it is rare. We have a team of trained professionals in each building that would respond if there's a need. Again, rarely for any restraints. Essentially, the most important part of the training is physical de-escalation is always the priority, and you try to try to verbally de-escalate the situation before any restraint is ever needed. But if there is an unsafe situation to the individual or others, that where a restraint must be used in order to keep everything safe, then it would be used by trained staff.
Thank you. And also seclusion. I understand that this is also part of current regulations. But what does this look like in action? Like, so what would cause a student to be put in seclusion, and how often is this used? Like, how long would a period of seclusion last?
Yeah, it's rarely used, and if a student cannot be controlled, and so if they're in a calm down type room,
Okay.
With staff trying to, ensure their safety again,
Okay.
Safety risk situation.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And just as an FYI for our community members who might not be aware of this, information on school safety is available online on the Pennsylvania Department of Education, and the detail is available by ethnicity and gender as well. So,
Thank you.
thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Klotz. Are there other comments or questions? Ms. Bowman?
Yeah, these are a couple somewhat peripheral, but on Code 805.2, hopefully this is the right one. Let me just double check. The one about the school safety personnel. It's really not a big deal. We already comply with this, but I am curious when the state required us to have a full-time security personnel, if they offered any funding with it, or did they just make the requirement and tell all school districts they were on their own?
That's a great question. I'm not 100% sure if the funding came with the requirement. It was a very recent, I can look into it and connect with Mr. Fisher, but my guess is that was an unfunded mandate, but I don't want to say that for 100% certainty.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And I'm sorry, I don't have you almost won't even need to know the number anyway. For the 9/11 one, it occurs to me that we have a generation of students who, are too young to remember that event. And do we, now that we're offering a moment of silence, which I'm all for, do we also teach them about 9/11 so they understand why we're having a moment of silence?
There are resources available and resources were provided. It wasn't a requirement to use those resources.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for the questions. Additional questions from the board? Mr. Kelly?
The definition of a weapon is, I'm not sure what page it's on, but it says, except that such term does not include a pocket knife with a blade of less than 2.5 inches in length.
Hey, Tim, could you
Sorry.
talk to the mic? Thank you.
The definition of a weapon, at one point is, I'm reading it here, it says, except that such term does not include a pocket knife with a blade of less than 2.5 inches in length. I can't tell which page it's on. It's
I can't find it either. I can tell you
Page
that
11.
I'll check with Mr. Fisher, but my guess is that's straight from the school code.
It's not, it's actually straight from federal law.
from federal.
You know what the 2.5 inches is from? Boy Scout knife.
That's what I was wondering. If
Yeah. No, literally,
Army.
seriously.
Oh, okay. I found that curious.
Okay, thank you. Any more comments or questions? Okay, well, on to second reading then. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, moving on to the last parts of the meeting, we have some announcements. An executive session was held this evening. The topics were personnel and negotiations. And then we have an announcement. The district will be closed for the Thanksgiving holiday from Thursday, November 28th through Monday, December 2nd. We have our board reorganization meeting scheduled for Tuesday, December 3rd at 7:30 p.m. Again, that's Tuesday, so that's different from what we usually do. And then we have a regular board meeting the following week on Monday, December 9th at 7:30 in this room. With no further business, I'd now like to get a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, are there any, all right, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting adjourned. Enjoy your